sticking around. It's a couple of tough acts to follow. We're going to continue to some extent talking about fake news, but I want to talk about a very particular variety of fake news and something that actually ends up fueling a lot of fake news, and that is eyewitness media. So sometimes you call that user-generated content. In some places, it can be citizen journalism. You know, it kind of depends, but all of that falls under the guise of eyewitness news. So when we're talking about eyewitness news, think about it in exactly what it sounds like. This is the first report that you're getting from the scene of something that's happening. This may be a terrorist attack or a natural disaster, but it could also be something that's a lot more lighthearted. A great cat video or a baby doing something adorable and it's shared on social media. And when you think about it, and especially when you're talking about eyewitness news that we've seen over the last few years, it's really influenced how media covers some of the biggest stories that have been happening. From the war in Syria to the refugee crisis, the U.S. election, Black Lives Matter and police shootings in the U.S., and wars everywhere really have been shaped largely by what we're seeing come from eyewitnesses that are at the heart of the story, because we can't be everywhere in media. We like to think we can, but we don't know when news is going to happen all the time. So often the first and the best report is coming from someone who was already there. And to say that there's always someone closer to the story. I mean, that's really what we have to think about when we're talking not only about eyewitness media, but really fake news at large. That's what it comes down to. There's always someone who is actually closer. And if something's being passed along, where did this really come from? And as great as eyewitness news can be in terms of really getting us much closer to a story than we would have otherwise been, it also can lead us astray. Not just media, but brands, businesses, anyone who wants to really use eyewitness media, user-generated content. They love that sort of thing. Even brands, they love things like Chewbacca Mom and using baby videos as something that they can use in their commercials and on their websites. So you can be led astray, especially if the video or the social content that's at play was wrong in the first place. So this is where my company comes in. If you haven't heard of us at Storyful, we've been around since 2010, but we're a social news and verification service. And that's to say that we are actually in the business of looking across social media to discover social content from eyewitnesses, from regular people, verifying that that's real, verifying that we know who the people are that actually own it, and then actually getting the rights to that and getting that into the hands of newsrooms, brands, businesses. We started with newsrooms, and that's the operation that I run is our news business. And we're doing this using a combination of some free tools, some in-house proprietary tools, but also old-fashioned journalism and investigation and research that's really getting us to the heart of knowing, is this real? Is this something that you can trust? Is this something that a news organization or a brand or a business is going to want to put their name on and put this out as part of the stories that they're telling? So knowing that not everybody here is in media, but everybody here probably uses social media in some fashion. And in some way, probably everybody here has seen a video or a photo or some sort of report that has been passed along the way, whether by your friends, by media. And I want to give you a little bit of some of the tips and some of the tools that are out there that you can use to do some of this yourself. Because really, I think when we've kind of talked a lot about fake news and how it can be combated, a lot of it comes down to the end users, which is all of us, not just those of us in media or those of us in technology, to really say, how can I check this? What can I do to make sure I'm not being taken in? Because when you really think about it, social media and stuff that's shared from regular people often is at the very heart of fake news. People are using the posts and the images of regular people and passing them along as being part of stories that they're not part of. So you don't want to be a part of that. So I'm going to get into some of the processes that our journalists use, and hopefully it'll be a help. So as a journalist, the approach we like to take when we're encountering, maybe it's a video, maybe it's a photograph, maybe it's a report that's coming from just a regular social media user. And much like we would when we're talking to a regular person about a story in person, we want to interview that content. We want to ask a lot of questions about it so that we can know what is it that we can really find out about this and how right can we really be. So for us, verification really comes down to three major points. the source, the person this actually came from, where did we actually find this from, the time and date, did this actually happen when it said it did, the same time of day it said it did, does everything line up, and also the location. Did this really happen where this purported to happen? Because you often find, and you'll see with some of the examples we get into later, that it isn't always that problem content that comes up on social media that people get fooled by is fake. It's not necessarily manufactured. It's that maybe it's something that's old that was shared to say it's happening now in a new place. We've seen that happen with the Brussels airport attacks, where people were sharing content that was actually from Minsk several years earlier, saying it was from that day and in Minsk. The location was wrong, the date was wrong, the content was still right. It still was a true thing that happened, but it just wasn't the right place at the right time. The context was totally wrong. And that's often the case when you're talking about fake content being used on social media. So let's dig into this a little bit. Let's get into the interview questions. So first, the source. And really, the source is the most important aspect of all of this. I mean, the others are definitely important, but when it comes right down to it, we want to know who is the person that's sharing this. You know, what is their connection to this story? If they're sharing something that's coming from, say, the scene of a terrorist attack in Paris, you know, who is this person? Are they a regular person? Are they a concert promoter? Were they at the soccer stadium? You know, does their account look real? Often accounts that are sharing fake news and are sharing fake reports, they had all kinds of indicators up that should have told you that. You know, maybe they didn't post very often. Maybe their account was created yesterday. Maybe they've never interacted with anyone, or maybe they're not following anybody, or they've never tweeted at anyone. So you look at different things here, like where are they posting from? When was their account created? What other things have they uploaded? Sometimes they're not going to be a good indicator. A guy who shared a very, I guess, story-altering video during the US election of Hillary Clinton stumbling outside the 9/11 memorial. Everything else on this guy's account was of hockey games. Every other thing he'd ever tweeted about, anything he'd ever posted about, he was a big hockey fan. But he happened to be there that day, and it did happen to be real. But you know, it was originally a red flag, as it should be, that someone like this didn't really seem to be interested in tweeting about anything like that before, or sharing anything like that before. And ultimately, you know, we want to find out, how can we get in touch with this person? That's ultimately what it comes down to, because you can't really verify something 100% unless you've talked to the person. It's very old-fashioned, I know, that the phone is still the #1 tool that we have. So, you know, we want to get in touch with them. So maybe that's finding other usernames for them. If they're seeing something on Twitter originally or Instagram originally, can we find a Facebook account or a LinkedIn account or some other way that we can find the phone number, an email address, some way to message them and get through to them? Because ultimately, the #1 question being, do they actually own this? Were they there when this was captured? And often people don't necessarily intend to mislead. They just don't necessarily realize that by posting a video or a photo or an account of something on their social accounts, that everyone's going to assume that that actually happened to them. I know that to some of us in here, that seems kind of silly, but that we encounter that all the time. So we want to know, were you really there? Some of the tools we use for this, I won't go through each of them individually, but these are some that you can look into, and there are tons of them. Really, the first 4, those are tools that you can use to help find phone numbers for people, especially based on information you might have, like their location, their name, other social information about them. Who is a great one if you can find a website that belongs to them, that you can see who actually has registered that website, so you can find contact information that way. This is a little tool for just some custom Facebook searching, but also LinkedIn is great, because if you can find out where they work, you can often get a work email address, a work phone number, find a way to get in touch with them to find out if they really were a part of the story. One of the things that we run into a lot as well, and I kind of mentioned that people maybe not necessarily are passing along something that belongs to them, you really need to be aware of the person that always has the really cool thing. They have the really cool video all the time. You know, they might always have the really nifty flooding video that's coming from India one week, and then it's from Alabama the next week. I don't think they're on an airplane going around shooting videos of flooding. So beware of that, because again, they're not necessarily intentionally misleading. They just, like the rest of us, want to share really cool stuff with their friends. So That's the #1 indicator to look out for when we're talking about sources. So let's get into location. So, we talk a bit about the source, and it really does come back to the location on that as well. If this source says on their accounts that they're from New York, but they have a pivotal video that's from inside the Bataclan in Paris during the Paris attacks, that's a red flag. It's not to say that it's wrong, but it should be a high point of suspicion. Maybe they have lots of other posts indicating that they were on vacation there. There's a picture of them at the airport. This is me with a baguette. They're doing all their vacation photos. That might tell us why they were there. Often you'll see on social accounts, especially on platforms that already have geolocation based in the mobile apps, that an image or a photo will be geolocated. That is a good starting point, not necessarily something that you can trust. Because I could easily download a photo from the internet, upload it from here today, right now, and it will show that I took that photo here, and it will make it look like it's from here. But it's a good place to start. At least you can know where the source was when they uploaded it. It may not be where the image or the video actually took place, but it's a good place to start. One of the things that we use the most, and it seems really simplistic and it's sometimes really difficult, is that we want to be able to find within something that's visual, whether that's a photo, whether that's a video, we want to find that exact point of view on some other source. And often that's going to be Google Earth, that's going to be Google Street View. So even if we can know nothing else about this video, maybe there are no signs in there, there's no shop windows, there's nothing else to indicate where it is, we just have to get in and start looking around. Find, okay, well, there's this building, it has this red roof on it, and it's next to this church, and then there's a square over here, and we're just gonna get in and find that exact place so that we can really locate exactly where it is. But often you're gonna get indicators inside of something like that. You're gonna get license plates, you're gonna get street signs, businesses of some sort, something that can help you locate that information. And in a video, obviously accents, dialects, that can also be a real indicator of where something took place. Though I guess that'd be a really tough one here. We have lots of accents and lots of dialects and languages here, so they'd have a tough time pinpointing a video with this group today, I think. So I mentioned some of the tools that we use on this one, but Google Earth, Street View, Wikimapia is really nice. It's more of a collaborative mapping tool, so especially in a situation where the maps are changing constantly, that's a good one to consult against as well. And finally, we're looking at the date, the time. So you can look at the upload time, so the timestamp that's on there, how does it line up against what we know are official events? But that can be a really tough one. It's a little tricky because every social platform has a different timestamp. Sometimes it's a standard, no matter what, that Twitter is in California. Tweet timestamps are always there. Other platforms are at the location of the user, of what their time zone is. Some of them are adapted to your time zone as to where you are. So you have to really think about that. Take a look at what it currently says so that you know what time zone is on there, because you can be tricked. That's been a way that I've seen a lot of media fall into that trap before, of using something that was from a wildly different time because they didn't really notice that the timestamp was actually from another place. You obviously want to do corroboration, and that's where the research really comes in. If there is a major event that's happening, you're going to see a lot of people talk about it. Not just one person is going to witness that, not just one person is going to say it happened. You want to look at things like shadows. You want to look at the weather. If it's raining in this video, is it raining where it said it was that day? And I'll show you a couple tools to look into that. And if you're looking at photos, there's a really great way to check the exchangeable image file. Actually, it's embedded information inside of the photo. So if someone emails you a photo, or if it's a photo you found online, you can easily look that up. So what you can do, and this is it's really a hacky tool, but it's Jeffrey's EXIF Viewer, which is both an online tool, it's also a Chrome plugin. But all you can do, you can upload a photo that you have or a URL to a photo online. It'll tell you everything that's embedded in there. Now, if there's nothing in that file, chances are it's been copied, downloaded, put on another social platform, maybe downloaded again. But if you have an original, or if you have something that's pulled directly from a site, it's going to have geolocated information. It's going to tell you the device. It's going to tell you the time of day. It's going to tell you whether their flash went off, what direction they were facing on GPS. It has tons of info in there. So if you can use an EXIF viewer, that's a really, really great indicator of the kind of data that you can find out. And a couple of other tools that are great for date that I mentioned there. Wolfram Alpha is great for looking up weather reports in various places at various times. Find My Shadow does the same thing, so you can actually look at what the shadows should look like in that. I mentioned Jeffrey's EXIF viewer. And also, the standby that I think everybody should use a lot more, especially when we're talking about people getting fooled by social videos and photos and fake news, is reverse image searching. So that's Google reverse images, that could be TinEye. A great example of this, this is from a couple of years ago, but it's a classic, it's a greatest hit. When a guy named Freddie Gray was killed by the police in Baltimore, there were lots of protests, some of them got out of hand, there was some looting going on. There were several accounts that were sharing photos like this and accounts like this of saying, you know, like really bragging about it, and there were several of these that we found. This is one in particular that we looked into. We did reverse image searching, and we found that even though this was a brand new tweet and allegedly a brand new photo, this had been already online and published at least 8 times. The original actually being from Karachi, Pakistan in 2012, and not from Baltimore in 2015. So we actually looked into several accounts like this, and not only were the images they were sharing pretty old, but the accounts themselves, whether it was the names, the photos, everything about them was all created just to pass along this image of bragging. And this was shared by tons of media, of course, to justify police action on cracking down on these protesters. And another fun one I'll go through, because this kind of gives you an indicator of maybe a story that looked like it was going to be fake, but it ended up being true. So this one's another greatest hits. It's a favorite of mine, because it's really cool videos. So there was a plane crash in Taiwan. We got the earliest indicator that this was happening. We have the model. And so we first get this tweet. So this is from a user in China with this image. And she said, "This is from my dash cam." And we're just like, no way is this possibly real. Like, nobody gets something like this. I mean, we know everyone has a dash cam there, but this is crazy, right? So one of the first things we did was in the second image there, we actually went to flightradar24.com, looked up what the bottom of an airplane would look like that's the same model that supposedly crashed. And at least what we had here did line up. But it's a pretty popular airplane. But then, in doing some searching, we found this video on YouTube from a guy named Aaron Chen. So from this, and it's kind of a wait for it. But on this account, we're seeing really great evidence. We have a timestamp, which is not perfect, but it's something. We have weather, we have signs, we have road signs there, and we have an airplane that's going across the highway. Kind of unlikely, but that's 2 people. And from there, we were also able to really geolocate that based on the fact that we had weather reports, we had signs, we got in Google Earth. We found that this was really close to where the crash site, we already knew where the crash site was at this point. This was within a few meters of there, so we were really close. And improbably, there's yet another video of the same thing. And yeah, who wouldn't yell if you saw something like that happen? And this one's an interesting one because we found this on a YouTube account of, they had it's still coming from the video. She just, as you might expect. But yeah, and this account had no information on it. We couldn't find how to contact this person, anything about them. But in some of their older videos, they actually had reference and some screenshots from a video game website with the username there. And by doing research on that video game website username, we found their Facebook account. And then on Facebook, we found out that it wasn't actually her video. The person who uploaded it was the woman you just heard. But it was actually her friend's car and his dash cam. And from there, we're able to get in touch with both of them, talk about what happened, and then ultimately get some permission for news outlets to use that. And all of that happened within about 20 minutes. So all in all, a completely improbable looking story on this side. You find not only is there 3 different accounts of this, but the first one was correct. It really did cross the highway there. And 3 different people had the same exact images, and all of that corroborating against a plane crash that we only had the littlest bit of information about. So in the end, what I hope you get from all this is that You can do all of this. Actually, a lot of it can happen really quickly. So as a user, there's a lot more you can find out about doing social media verification, whether it's your friends, what you're encountering online, and really what you could be doing in your day-to-day lives, no matter where you're working and what you're doing. So with that, if you have questions, find me in the hall afterward. I know we're kind of moving fast, but thanks a lot for listening to me here today.